On August 26th, my next guest made her professional MMA debut at Combate Global, and she is right here with me today talking about my favorite strawweight in the entire world, Mariah Castro. Mariah, it's been like, I don't know, 2 or 3 months since I last talked to you. We're back at it again. It's good to see your face. You look fantastic. I don't see any black eyes.
Well, I actually do have a little bit of, you can't see it, but I sparred early this morning, so I definitely got a couple of nicks and scratches there, but it's my first hard sparring session back, so I'm just glad to be back, after I took, I was training, but I was taking it light because my shins were beat to hell. And I was sore. I'm not gonna lie, my shins were obliterated. So throwing the kicks and everything, I was like dying inside each time I had to throw a kick. So I'm finally back to normal. So it's back. Let's get it going again.
Well, let's get it going again, indeed. And before I get into talking about your amazing fight, um, talk about adversity. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about me. I was like dying on my deathbed with COVID. I stayed up to like 1:30 watching your fight. And, it was like in a delirium and like blurry things were happening. But, you won the fight. I was happy. I passed out. Right before the show, I looked at that fight again. And I'm like, holy shit, I see things vividly. I like appreciated the full body of work. Now, we'll definitely talk about that. But first, I want to talk about UFC 279. And holy shit, dude, like this was a card that I thought was completely fucked and completely cursed. And now we have a whole different like card in front of us. What are your thoughts on some of these brand new matchups that we have for UFC 279? And I'd love to get your opinion on the weight miss for Khamzat Chimaev. That's a big story that's coming out of this. And in the fight community, it's going to reverberate. There are people that maybe don't have so many nice things to say about Khamzat right now, but I would just like to get your opinion on this new re-roll that we have for UFC 279 and just your thoughts about all the chaos that's led up to fight day.
Well, after a roller coaster of emotions with this card, I actually like the matchups better now. So it fell apart to be rebuilt in a better way. Because realistically, like the Nate and Tony matchup was probably something that they should have went with to begin with. It just made sense. And if this guy's gonna go out and this is gonna be his last fight, you kind of want it to be on a good note. Like despite whatever dealings that he's had with the UFC, I feel like he's done a lot for the company and he's been with them for so long. You owe him that much just to give him, a good way out. So it definitely worked out. On the side of Chimaev missing weight, I was like, I almost thought it was planned. Like it was something that he was planning to do at some point. I don't know why. I'm not sure the angle yet, but it was just, to me, him laughing it off and things like that. It puts a bad taste in your mouth because you got this guy walking around talking about championship material. And a part of that is being disciplined enough to make the weight. Right. So, you can't throw these words around where you're this and you're that, and you're not disciplined enough to be a professional. It was super, super unprofessional. And it's like, they probably should. I agreed with what Connor said. They probably should have just pulled him from the card to make a point. But instead, now you've made it okay by just, we'll revamp the entire card around it. And now he doesn't get fined, right, for missing weight. He avoids the 30% fine for missing weight because, we changed it to a catch weight. So it's just, it puts a bad taste in your mouth. And now you could see how the UFC is operating around him and they're pushing him, Anybody else probably they would have pulled him from the card.
Right. Well, what's interesting, Mariah, is you look at the main card and there's only one bout that's not a catch weight, and that's Johnny Walker against Kutalaba. That's happening at light heavyweight. The rest of these bouts, Aldana versus Macy, that's at a catch weight of 140. The Leech going up against Z-Rod, that's at 180. The co-main is 180. Well, I guess I'm fake news because Diaz and Ferguson, they both made weight, so that's welterweight. Yeah. But the very first fight and then the main event are the only real weight classes.
I didn't know Macy's was a catch weight.
Yeah, 140, which is kind of weird.
weird. That is a weird catch weight, and I don't like that.
Yeah, that's it's definitely weird, but I'm also looking at it from this perspective. Like, as a fan, I do agree with you. Diaz versus Ferguson, that's going to be an absolute banger of a fight, and it's a coin flip. You and I were chit-chatting back and forth. You got Nate Diaz going into this one. I'm taking Tony Ferguson, but it's one of these fights where I see paths to victory for both of these guys. It's literally a 50-50 fight with Nate Diaz. His boxing in particular is what really stands out, and he can absolutely outbox Tony Ferguson. Listen, Tony Ferguson is not going to outbox Nate Diaz. It is not going to happen. I've seen enough Nate Diaz fights to know exactly how he fights. With Tony Ferguson, though, I also feel like he has this X factor. I think he's the more well-rounded guy. That is, I'm trying to say that in a relative sense. I understand Nate Diaz is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I know he's the shit. He has definitely choked out a lot of guys on the ground before. But I just think like Tony Ferguson overall, his body of work, like he is unpredictable, very exciting to watch. Nate Diaz, unpredictable, very exciting to watch. I think the biggest thing for Nate is, cut management, right? I think at this point in his career, that's kind of like the biggest thing, because Tony's going to hit him once or twice and crack him open. Is that going to affect his vision? Is that going to compel the doctors to stop the fight? It's in Vegas, so I'm hoping, they've seen enough fights. They've seen this time and time again. I'm hoping that's not the case. When you look at the bout, what are the paths to victory that you see for Diaz and then for Ferguson? Because it's a very tightly contested fight. I think at this stage in the career, these guys just really want to put on an exciting fight, and I think that's what we're going to get tonight.
So I think for Nate, it would probably be using his length. A lot of times I feel like he doesn't use his length the way he should. I would keep Tony on the end of my punches if I was Nate, because he wants to get in tight and land elbows and land his unpredictable kind of stuff. I'll be honest, as far as the ground goes, I don't know if Tony's grappling is enough to neutralize Nate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not totally convinced. Also considering that, this is Tony moving up to 170, and sure, he did the Ultimate Fighter at 170, but different caliber, different time, way later. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I am reluctant to pine for people or bet on people that are making their way into a weight class for, the first time, say.
Right.
So that's another factor that I would say. I don't know if it's going to make him slower. I don't know if it's going to, affect his cardio. One thing we know about Nate Diaz is it's the cardio. However, we also know that he's a 5-round guy.
Exactly.
He's a 5-round guy, and you put him in a 3-round fight, and things always go differently. You always say, well, in a 5-round fight, I picked Diaz. In this fight, I picked. So right. It always does. It comes down to that too. I just think, it's a better matchup for Nate, and that he'll be able to use his boxing and kind of like, touch Tony up. Is he gonna knock him out? No, probably not. But just keep him on the end of the punches. Just keep moving. Don't let this guy get close to you and start throwing his elbows, and use those long arms, and definitely avoid the leg kicks. He's got Tony's gonna, obviously, everybody that fights Nate, what do? You kick his leg.
Chop him out, right? Chop him down.
If you have any sense, that's what you do, I should say. So definitely expect Tony to be kicking his leg and throwing elbows.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be an exciting one. When we also look further down the card, aside from the main event, we also have an interesting co-main event. It certainly became a lot more interesting because of the drama. Kevin Holland and then Khamzat Chimaev. It'll be happening at a catch weight of 180 pounds. Does Kevin Holland have a viable path to victory for this fight, in your opinion?
So I think the viable path is, the guy probably didn't have the best weight cut.
Mm-hmm.
Take advantage of that. See if you get him tired. I definitely think that his best path is, like, Kevin has insane cardio too. Like, if you watch him, he keeps a pace.
Yeah.
He doesn't slow down, like, and he's trash talking at the same time. So
Mm-hmm.
he's got good wins. And I just think that, if Chimaev blows his load and doesn't put him away, that's where it's Kevin's time to shine. I think that's the likelihood that, you know, if he is to win, it's, oh, you're tired, I got you now.
Right.
Like he could make someone tired of beating his ass. You know, if you get people like that where they just gas from winning the fight, like, I think that's definitely something that could happen.
You know what? I was like watching Chimaev's last fight against Gilbert Burns. That to me was like, wow, I saw him get tired for the very first time. I also saw him make some sus decisions in the cage that kind of like took me back. And hey, listen, you know, when you're riding the couch like me and you're watching these fights, I'm thinking this is wonderful. But I also like view fights a little bit differently. I talk to more and more of you guys. I talk to other coaches, and I'm just like, you know, I don't know how happy I would be with this fight if I was like a training partner of Chimaev, or if I were one of his coaches. Like, why are you brawling with this guy? Use your size. Don't ego fight this guy. Don't brawl with this guy. Use what makes you dangerous. Use your takedowns. Clench this guy up. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, why is he like? Why is he not thinking these things through? Why isn't he making this? Why isn't he making these adjustments? Because Gilbert Burns possesses that knockout power. You get cocky, you will get smashed. And Gilbert Burns smashed him a few different times. I would go as far as to say I I would not call anybody a dummy if they said that they thought Gilbert Burns won that fight. I would not call anybody a dummy. I thought Chimaev did enough personally, but Burns certainly had his moments in that fight. I think for Kevin Holland, if Chimaev approaches this in a similar mindset, that's going to bode well for Kevin Holland. If I'm Kevin Holland, I want to get in a fist fight with this guy. I want to have a striking exchange. Be really interesting. I think Holland needs to start fast, though. He cannot afford a slow start, even though it is a 5-round co-main event. He still cannot afford a slow start. He needs to get out of the gate, and he needs to be aggressive going right into it, in my opinion. So it'll be a really interesting thing. It's a really interesting fight. Probably one of the excuse me, probably one of the more compelling fights on the card. Are there any others that you're really interested in, maybe further on down the card, on the undercard, or elsewhere?
I mean, how could I not say my training partner, Elise Reed, is fighting Melissa Martinez. So that's definitely, if I'm looking at the undercard, that's one that I'm really interested in. Melissa came from Combate, so hopefully we're sending her back there.
Hopefully so. So let's talk a little bit about this fight. Melissa Martinez, she's 7-0. She's very young. And having watched a couple of her fights before in Combate for the weight class, she does have stopping power. I've seen her knock people out in the past. She is a bright prospect, very gifted, exciting to watch. Interestingly enough, Elise is a little bit taller than her. That doesn't happen very often. And their reach is also about the same. So one of the I won't call it a knock, but one of the things that everyone talks about Elise is like, oh, she's really short, and she's like, she has short limbs and stuff like that. I'm like, what? But she's making it work for her. It doesn't, none of that. Like, think outside of all of the tape, think outside of the measurements, and just watch the fights. And it was just one of those things where this was announced, and a lot of people are predictably on Melissa Martinez to win this fight. She's coming into it as a -170 underdog. Your girl Elise is coming into it as a +145 underdog. So like when you think about it, knowing Elise and just training with her day in and day out, what are some of the keys for her to find a victory over Melissa Martinez?
So definitely watching film on Melissa, I felt like she's a little bit one-dimensional. So we kind of know what she wants out of it. She wants to kind of make it ugly, use all her boxing, things like that. So for Elise, it would be kind of mixing it up. You definitely have more tools than this girl. So mixing it up and not getting into that brawl. It'd be similar to my fight, I feel. Just mix it up. Like, if you're, this girl wants to come forward on you, kind of mix in, clinch her up, take her down. If you want to steal around, if it's a close round, steal around with a takedown. I wasn't particularly impressed with the girls' clinch game and grappling. I feel like she stands really tall, and she's not going to be able to get those hips back in time if Elise does decide to take her down. So, and she plays a real high guard too. So, it makes it that much harder to defend the takedowns. And going into this fight, Elise is a kick heavy fighter, karate style kind of fighter. So you're definitely not expecting this girl to try to take you down. You think you have it figured out when you go into a fight against Elise, but she has more tools that, people haven't gotten to see yet. And I really feel like this fight, she's going to be able to show them. And not for nothing, like she definitely has that knockout power. I can confirm. I mean, if her fights, her past fights weren't enough, I can definitely confirm to you that she does hit hard. So I'm not really concerned about, and her gas tank is amazing. That's another thing that's like in her back pocket. Nobody can keep a pace like this girl. Like I'm telling you right now. So definitely those things are going to help her out. The cardio, definitely her composure. She's a super composed person. When she fights, she's very, no matter how it's going, you're not going to see her panicking. Like, she's very level headed. So that's definitely, and I think that she'll have the strength advantage as well. She's a physically strong person, like strong. And I don't know if it's because of the military training that she does, because she does that as well. She does army training. I don't know what that's about, but she's like, when she grabs you, it's like, holy shit. Like you can feel like you're trying to move her. She's not moving.
Yeah. Well, I will say this about her. When she was on the show, she said the exact same thing about you, that you hit really fucking hard. So, hey, iron sharpens iron. One of the things that I like so much about Elise is I've looked through her fights. I've seen the adversity that she's had to go through. And you look at the people that she's lost to. Sam Hughes, good for her. Hughes did a great job. She did what she had to do to win the fight. But she fought Sijara Eubanks, and Sijara Eubanks is fucking huge. And I was just like, oh my God, nobody wants to fight Eubanks. And that's how Reed got in, is because she's like, yeah, fuck it, I'll take the fight. That says a lot about her. Also, look at all the other girls that she's fought. And Hillary Rose is a fantastic fighter. She's not in the UFC. Her record isn't great, but she's deceptively good. Watch that fight at CFFC 97, Reed versus Rose. It was a killer fight. Hillary had moments where she was inches away from winning that fight, and she did what she needed to do. Elise did what she needed to do to make the right adjustments and get a knockout over Hillary Rose. That was one of my favorite fights of Elise's so far. She also has wins over Jazz DeVicious and then Jillian DeCourcy. Like, these are the types of things that you want to see in a prospect like Elise. And, no, I'm not trying to throw shade on her opponent. 7-0, that's very, very impressive. But this girl has not fought the same girls that Elise has fought. So that 5-2, you'll look at it and think, whatever. But again, I would tell you, peel back the layer of that onion, look at the girls that Elise has had to fight in order to get here. And it's night and day. We're not even talking about the same things.
I think that definitely makes a difference. Is like she fought the who's who of who was around. You know what I mean? At the time, she was a very experienced amateur as well. I think she had either 9 or 10 amateur fights. So she really, she's more experienced than a lot of people. A lot of girls don't take that many fights as an amateur. I think a lot of people were surprised that I took as many as I did as well. But I'm like, why not? Yeah. You want the experience. You kind of want, but definitely the level of competition is different for Melissa Martinez. And even stylistically, like, it's hard. It's not easy to prepare for Elise. She has a very awkward style. And she's still, developing her game. So to see the different things that she's incorporated in there, it's hard to prepare for. It's hard to prepare for a sparring match with her. So
I can imagine,
so definitely interesting. I don't know if Melissa's got some new tricks up her sleeve. She may, what's funny is she may even look for a takedown herself,
Right.
to try to mix it up. They may have the same game plan.
Yeah.
That would be funny to see how it's executed. So I like the matchup stylistically. I really do.
It's the second fight, to the best of my knowledge. It's the second fight on the early prelims, so make sure you guys check that one out. One of the fights, and then we'll move on to a different topic that I have circled that I really, really, really want to see is Hakeem Dawodu versus Julian Erosa. That is going to be an absolute banger of a fight. I'm taking Julian Erosa in this fight. He's coming into it as an underdog, but I'm telling you, like, this is the type of guy. Every single time I bet against GCJ, he burns me, and I am not betting against him anymore. The last two fights, I picked Jourdain, and then I picked Steven Peterson. He ends up winning both of those fights. His last loss was against Sungwoo Choi about a year ago. He's beat Sean Woodson. He's beat Nate the Land Shark, and then Jourdain, like I just mentioned, and then Steven Peterson. He's going up against a really tough guy, Hakeem Dawodu. This guy, tough as nails. And the thing, though, if there is a critique on him, and it's kind of shitty, but I will say it because MMA fans are kind of shitty, is they'll call him a decision machine. He might not be the most exciting guy, but he's finding ways to win. He comes into the fight as a minus 220 favorite. Julian Erosa is going into it as a plus 180 underdog. Does the Vegas lines, does that surprise you at all about this particular matchup? Or is it about kind of like what you were expecting?
It's not a surprise to me. I feel like Erosa has had a rocky career, and that's why people are, they're not putting him as the favorite. They got this new young prospect. It happens like that. The new young prospect is the favorite. I will say Julian's chin has been a little funny, at times. So I think they're kind of thinking that his chin might not hold up for this one, because you got a young, powerful guy he's gonna throw. He's definitely and he's trying. And I, even if he is a decision machine, as a decision machine myself, like he's trying to to land that punch to finish the fight. We just don't always force the finishes. But if I like one thing about this fight, it's the experience of Julian Erosa. It's that he's fought pretty much everybody. He's fought guys tougher than Dawodu. So, that's always something that's in your back pocket, is experience that you can't cheat. That's the one thing, like, you just can't cheat that. And, even if you're down right in a fight, that experience sometimes helps you to change the game plan, approach it at a different, where other less experienced fighters aren't, they aren't equipped enough. Their IQ is not high enough. They just haven't had the experience in order to switch the game plan. It's plan B and, stuff like that. So for Julian, I think that his experience might help him in this fight. Now, yeah, I could see you picking him. I could definitely see, and we know that he's not going to get tired either. So definitely don't have to question.
He's huge too. He's freaking huge. Every single time I watch it, like, I forget how huge this guy is until he like makes it, and he makes the walk. I'm like, wow, how can this guy at 6'1", 6'2", whatever the fuck, how can he make the weight? Like, I don't understand how this guy's able to make 145 pounds, but he must have it down to a science. I know you guys all do. I'm wondering, and we're about to find out, I'm wondering if that size discrepancy between Dawodu and Erosa is going to maybe give Dawodu some issues. We'll see.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you got to give the edge in grappling to Julian. He does have fantastic jiu-jitsu. If I'm him, that's what I'm looking to do. Take this guy down.
Absolutely.
Down. Yeah, like tire him out. He's probably going to give you a submission. Like when we always say pressure makes cracks. So when you are on top of somebody and, they're going to give you something. They're either going to turn their back or they're going to leave an arm out, and they're going to do something because they're so tired that they start disregarding things like that. You get desperate. You want to get up. You want to get out. So I feel like that's what the trajectory for me is, that he takes him down. He smothers him a little bit. Dawodu gets a little desperate, and makes a mistake in the grappling, and Julian takes advantage of it. And what is impressive about him is he gets these submissions late in the fight when you're all bloody and sweaty, and that's incredibly difficult to do.
Oh,
Okay,
I
like
can
that,
imagine.
you get so slippery, it's like nothing. And he, like, if he gets a hold of your neck, doesn't matter.
Right. And it's not even it's also like your own like nastiness, right? Like you get sweat on your
Oh yeah.
forearms, or if you get a cut somewhere and it's like, try doing anything that involves like grip strength or technique when you're freaking coming out of a bathtub. It's impossible. But making it happen, that's a fight that I'm really interested in. I'm confident that Arosa is going to figure out a way to get a win. I looked at it. I saw this matchup and I was just like, oh yeah. Like I was like, this is a fight that Arosa wins. Like this is what he does. Like could you like when he choked out Charles Jourdain? I was like, what the fuck? Like I didn't think that was going to happen. Like I feel like this guy has had enough of these moments, and I just feel that he might be people might be sleeping on him for whatever reason. I don't know why, but like he has made a habit of finishing some really good fighters. He finished Sean Woodson. He finished the Land Shark. He finished Jourdain. And I think people kind of forget about that sometimes. So we'll see what happens. I like GCJ on this one. I want to flip the script though. I don't want to talk about the UFC anymore. I want to talk about you specifically. I want to talk about this debut fight. I got to tell you, going into it and just thinking about it from your perspective and trying to like marinate on all the things that are going on in your life, and like when you are getting ready to make your pro debut, I'm just thinking to myself like that's got to be a mind fucking away, because your amateur career, all your accomplishments, that champion status that you had before, it is gone. And you happened to, I think, take probably the most difficult fight that you possibly could have taken at this point in your career. But you took it. And what I mean by that is like, you're not fighting in your backyard anymore. Your corner, like your entire gym, they aren't going to show up to your fight. Like you took the exact opposite. Like you fought in basically a TV studio with only a handful of people there. It was out of state. It was a totally unique experience. There's all these like first time experiences that are happening. And by the way, it's a pro fight, so it's like this shit like counts for real now. It's like being in college, right? Like your GPA matters now. It's not high school anymore. We're in the big leagues. That's a lot to like. That's a lot that could that's like going on simultaneously that could like screw up your mind. So that's where I really wanted to start. Like when all these things were going on, like you didn't look nervous. I knew you wouldn't be, but like how did you like approach all this knowing you had all these things going on in the peripheral? How did you just kind of tune all that stuff out and just focus on what it is that you needed to do to be ready for her?
So now that you break it down and I actually think about it, because I feel like while all of those things were going on, I didn't really like take the time to think about them, about, oh, I'm going to fight this girl in her backyard. She's probably, at least for, it's a Latin organization, you got this girl from Guatemala with a super Latin name. Like, you go in thinking like, oh, there's probably gonna be some bias, but it's like I said it too. I was like, this fight could have been anywhere. It could have literally been anywhere. And that was my mindset, was that let me like remove the pressure around, oh, this is a top 5 organization. I'm traveling, for this. This is a pro debut. It's not like losing on the regional scene. I really just felt something, so like I was like, it's my time. Like I was so convinced. I really didn't even spend time thinking on all of those factors and adding pressure to myself. A lot of it was because they kept us pretty busy over there, as far as like, media and like whatever obligations. They tell you to be here, tell you to be there. So sometimes you don't really get that time. Also, you're cutting weight. So there's other things going on, that you're giving your attention to, where you don't sit there and let these thoughts creep in. I fully enjoyed the experience. I don't mind going, it wouldn't be the first time that I went somewhere and I fought and I'm not from there. I've lost a decision that way where I felt like, wow, I thought we won that, but
Mm-hmm.
you know how it goes sometimes, split decision, loss. And yeah, for this one, I just really felt so locked in, like I was in tune. I'm like, I finally shook my imposter syndrome where it's like, I know I do deserve this. I am ready for this. That's where it finally like it hit. And I was like, this fight could be anywhere against anybody, and I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna do what I do,
Yeah.
regardless. It was just it was a different kind of determination for this one because it counts. But I also I let myself enjoy it as well. That's one thing that like I don't take from myself is like, regardless, I want to enjoy it. I don't want to make this thing into a chore, like, oh boy, like, now it's time to like go fight, let's get this over with. That's not
Mm-hmm.
what it is for me. I've had losses that I've enjoyed the fight, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
ultimately it's a good time. I love to be there. It could have been against anybody and it could have been anywhere, and I still felt like it was going to be my time regardless.
One of the things that I was really interested in is with Combate Global is like they shoot a lot of B-roll. So they're going to want you to punch a bag. They're going to want you to, just like in the Contender series, right? Like, people are warming up and, they're smashing the bag on the ground with their elbows and it looks all badass and stuff. That B-roll that they show you is maybe 15, 20 seconds. But for you, it's like, I don't know how many takes you probably had to do. You're probably in there 20, 30 minutes, maybe even longer, and you're cutting weight. You're probably not like, you probably have other things on your mind other than like shooting this B-roll for them and maybe answering, I won't call them cornball questions, but cornball questions. Like there's a lot going on that you like a lot of people aren't really necessarily accustomed to. It's just like, hey, these are things that you have to do. It's part of like the pre-production. Were there any takeaways or I don't know if a funny story is the right word, but was there anything where it's like, man, there's all these like things that they want me to do, and I just kind of want to like sit in my bathtub with my Epsom salts and be left the fuck alone.
Well, it was so the first I did a photo shoot and then I did a video shoot. The photo shoot was quick. The guy was like super cool. He was like, I know you're cutting weight. I know you don't want to be here. I'm gonna make you look good and I'm gonna do it as quickly as I possibly can. They were coaching me through it, like just one more, just one more. Because you're doing, say, 10 shots of each position, each pose that they want. And not only that, I was first to go for the photo shoot. So I had to sit through all of the test shots. They had to do like a million
Oh
test shots.
man.
Yes, to test out the lighting, test this,
Right.
test that. And so that's what was like, oh my God, these shots don't even count. We're doing this for 20 minutes. These shots don't count. Got to stay here another, 30 minutes and do more shots. And then they're like, okay, you're done. And I'm thinking, oh, like I'm gonna leave soon. And they're like, oh no, wait, we have the video shoot. And I'm like, the what? So now I'm literally they have me, doing all these like suspenseful type, they want me to walk from here to there and pose at the end, or they want me to have this face or that. And I'm like, dude, like take the fucking picture and let me go. Like,
Yeah,
because
right.
we're dying there. And I did let them know, like, please move it along, like I'm
Yeah.
dying here.
Yeah.
The heavy bag thing and the shadow boxing, and the guys like, we're looking for speed, we want high energy. And all of us are like, what fucking energy? We haven't even eaten today. Like,
Yeah.
in the back of our minds. But I legitimately broke a sweat doing that video shoot, like between the heavy bag punching, the shadow boxing. Yeah, like the video and photo alone were about 2 hours. And then I had to do an interview. A lot of it was, and you have to wait there until every other fighter has
Yeah.
done their stuff and they bring you back to the hotel. So I was there probably 4 hours with
Wow. That's a
people.
long
I
time.
made good friends there waiting in the room. The one guy, I was like complaining to him, and he's fought for Combate a couple of times. So he's like laughing and he's like, you'll get used to it. And I'm thinking like, damn, I am gonna have to get used to this.
Right. Right. Think about it. Like, you're just getting started and, here in a couple of years, you'll be in the UFC. And then it's like, now you're talking about a totally different production. You're talking about a totally different layer of obligations that you have to do. but still, I think it's significant enough because it shows that you've just graduated to a different level. And when you're fighting on a different level, there are like different things that you have to do as part of that. And those things, like, they sound cool, but oftentimes that's not really the case, because it's like, cool, like, yeah, after I eat a Big Mac, absolutely interview me. I'll be happy, right? I'll be like happy and fed and great. But like, you're cutting weight, like, you got the fight on the forefront of your mind. Like, there's probably some like mental exercises that you need to do to get ready, any sort of like last minute physical preparations that you need to do. So it's like, I can't do two things at once. And like, to me, I'm thinking of it, it's like, dude, like, there are certain things I want to do to prepare mentally, and I'm taking photos, I'm answering all these questions, and like, it's like, it's taking away time from like the prep that I'm normally accustomed to. And I'm a creature of habit. And I think a lot of fighters are, particularly in the build up to some of these fights. And that could like maybe throw you off your game even. I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but like, I think the mental part, like, being locked up here, like, I'm sure there's a process that everybody goes through. And to me, being a creature of habit, I think that would cause anxiety, because now I'm like completely removed from that, and I'm doing all these other obligations, and it takes away from the time I normally would have to prepare. Was any of that like a concern for you when you were in the studio doing all the things that they were asking you to do?
Well, I'll be honest, I was, extremely fasted at that point. So I was only thinking of getting back to at least have one meal, because that was going to be my only meal of the day.
Right.
Was a nice hearty salad. So that's really what was on my mind. Like, I always made it a point from the beginning not to get too superstitious in my routine, where it's like, if
Yeah.
I don't do certain things, I'm like, my energy's off, or this is off, or that's going to play a part in my performance, or things like that. I really only keep it to like, obviously after I weigh in, I know not to do anything out of the ordinary that I wouldn't have done, or
Yeah.
that I won't do for, after training, before training, things like that. Like that, as far as routine goes, I keep it, pretty realistic. Why would if I'm not going to have, this double chocolate milkshake, I wouldn't have, right? Like,
Right.
before or after training, why would I have it as soon as I weighed in, and then your stomach's all messed up. So there is some level of routine or habit that I do keep.
Yeah.
But I was just happy to be out of New Jersey, if I'm telling the truth.
Yeah.
Just to even walk around, like, whatever. We went to the beach after weigh-ins. I went to the beach. I was hanging out. I was like, everybody's like, you're gonna spend time in the sun. Like, don't be out in the sun too long. And I'm like, Jesus, guys, like,
Yeah.
relax a little bit. Like, I'm drinking my water. I'm hydrated. I'm good. I just wanted to go for a swim, relax a little bit, like, decompress. Like, the hard part is over. Now I get to kind of, like you say, do my mental exercises. And that was what it was, like a pre-fight meditation. I went to the beach and I hung out, whatever. We went to go
Yeah.
grab food, and it's the relaxing part now. And because the following day is what's anticipated, what I really wanted to get to, what I really came here for. So I probably didn't soak up as much of the experience as I would have, because I was so focused on
Yeah.
the but I still had a good time there, you know.
Can you talk to me, Mariah, a little bit? Like, the day of the fight, I remember that you and I were chatting, and I really wasn't asking you a whole bunch of questions, because I was like, well, I'll let her talk to me when she feels like talking to me, because no, fuck that. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm leaving her alone, because she's doing all, her fight stuff. But there was a time where we weren't sure if you were going to be the very first fight of the night, like on the undercard, or if you were going to slide into the swing spot at the very end, not knowing like when you were going to fight. Like, can you talk a little bit? Like, when did they tell you, like, hey, this is going to be your slot, this is what you're going to do? I'm just trying to think, like, knowing what time you're going to fight, like, that's a really, really important thing to know, because I'm sure the day of the fight, you wake up at probably a normal-ish kind of hour. You might do like a light jog or whatever it is that you typically do. But you have to, I would imagine, at least I would, you have to find a spot in your schedule where you have like a pre-fight nap. I think that's probably really, really important. for so many reasons. Can you talk to me like just from a logistical standpoint, when did you find out for sure that you were going to be in that swing bout space?
So initially during media day, everybody was like, they wanted to do my shots and everything first because they kept saying, all right, well, you're first up, so we want to get your stuff out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following day, they do weight checks. Before the day before weigh-ins, they do weight checks. They want to see where everybody is. So I do my weight check, and they have the bout arrangement on the table in front of me. So I'm looking at it, and I'm like, wait, I'm last. And they're like, yeah, you're the post lim. And I'm like, the what? I didn't know they do post limbs. I personally did not know they did post limbs.
Yeah.
I know like Bellator will do them, like certain organizations will do it. And what's funny is prior to that, I was just talking about with my coach about how terrible post limbs are. We just so happen to be talking about that. And I was like, man, don't ever book me a post limb fight. Like, talking about it. And I go upstairs and I'm like, well, fuck, I'm the post limb. I didn't know, it was like, and I was like, all right, I guess it is what it is. I'm like, they're like, you're probably going to be fighting at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, oh my God, what do you think if we get a lot of finishes? Do you think I'll be in there sooner? And they're like, well, honestly, because, they have a set of time for the network that's reserved. They're going to try to stretch it out any way they can. So the short answer was no. It's like, you're going to probably go on that time regardless. So I found out that the day before weigh-ins, and I was just like, whatever, man, I got to focus on cutting my last few pounds anyway. And the pre-fight nap was super, super, super clutch. Okay.
Yeah.
What I did like is that they don't make you go to the arena all at the same time. It's the shuttles to the studio are based on what time you're fighting. Nice. So they only made me have to be at the studio. I left the hotel at 9 p.m. So it's much different from over here where you have to sit in a back room for 6 hours. Even if you're no matter what fight you are, they expect everybody there at a certain time. They were, I was lucky enough to get to stay in my hotel until 9 o'clock. So I took the best nap. I woke up, I packed my little bag. I was in a great mood that day. I used to do my laundry. I was doing a whole bunch of stuff. I was having a great day. Like, all right, 9 o'clock, let's go down there. Let's take the shuttle over there. I got there. They weren't super micromanagey. I was able to go out and watch the fight, sit in the bleachers. Lots of places don't even let you leave your room. Okay. So that, that was cool too. Obviously, they all know where you are. You don't go anywhere without them knowing. As a matter of fact, you can't even use the bathroom on your own. You have to be escorted to the bathroom. They will stand outside.
That makes sense.
They will stand outside. They just, you need to be escorted by an inspector to the bathroom. They wait outside, I guess, to make sure you're not doing any funny shit.
Yeah.
But they were super cool over there, man. I was really glad that I was able to at least watch the show for a while before I had to go back,
that makes me happy actually about the bathroom escort thing, because you don't want some guy freaking shooting up Trent or fucking what other sus things now, knowing that he's not going to get drug tested. Hey, no beefs with that whatsoever. I completely understand. Talk me through. You're getting ready to you're warming up. You're getting ready to go in there, and one of the things I noticed about watching Combate for the past, year and a half I've been doing this show, they crank these fights out. There really isn't a lot of bullshit. It's not like the UFC where you make this long walk into the cage and then they put the grease on your face and they're checking your gloves. They've already done all that shit. You walk in there and it's basically bam, they dump you off right in the cage. The next girl comes in, she makes the walk, they dump her in the cage. And all of a sudden it's hey, we're getting ready to fight now. And it's I kind of like that. I really do. Sometimes I'm in the mood for all the drama, but you know what? Save it for the main card. For me, it's I want these fights to go. And before I knew it, the main event ends, you're raking the walk, or she makes the walk, then you make the walk, and bam, you get ready to go. Now, talk me through, excuse me, hopefully I'm not dying here. talk me through, like, you make the walk, you're about ready to go. Did Paul tell you anything, like, specifically? Like, can you talk to me? Like, did you have like a set game plan for Lupe? Because one of the things that I know about her is I'm familiar with her gym, I'm familiar with her coach, and I've seen a couple of her fights before, and I know like she can come out being pretty aggressive. It looks like she hits really fucking hard. And was that kind of like in the back of your mind, getting ready to like fight a girl like this? Were you expecting her to come out of the gate and be really really aggressive? Or were you and Paul maybe thinking about something else? Because it's kind of like one of those reverse Uno cards where nobody's dumb at this level, and like she probably knows exactly what you're thinking her game plan's going to be. There's a question about her aggression level, because I kind of thought, having watched the fight, she was going to like go crazy at you like a ravaged pit bull, and she really wasn't. Like she was aggressive, yes, but like not in the sense that I thought a lot of people assumed she was going to be.
So me and Paul had opposing opinions, actually. I thought that she wasn't going to be that aggressive. And I told her, I was like, I don't think she's going to start off that aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, not to say anything, like if you watch my fights, I guess you kind of know I'm no slouch. So you don't want you don't want to be this, it's not the same, when you're on the amateur circuit and you're fighting these girls that are green and stuff like that, like it does, you want to move forward and be aggressive in these amateur fights because there's less things to worry about. You have shorter rounds. You can empty the tank that way. And you're still not tired. A 9-minute fight, I couldn't get tired in a 9-minute fight.
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm saying? So I think those elements, I did see, I thought that she would pace herself.
Uh-huh.
So that was something that I thought. I knew it would be, and I said this in the interview, that it would be the bull versus the matador either way. She was aggressive, and she got aggressive toward the end. She wasn't as aggressive as she's been in her past fights. I guess all things considered, it's for her too. You're talking about a girl that has 3 amateur fights.
Right.
Okay. Not a girl with a ton of experience. You think about all the things that I was saying where I'm like, all right, well, this is a top 5 org, me questioning, even though I had a full amateur career, me questioning like, all right, am I ready to make this jump? Stuff like that, before I got to Florida. By the time I got to Florida, that was gone.
Right.
But those elements, I'm sure she was having the same thing. In fact, I kind of felt that energy from her even before our dealings before the fight, things like that. I could tell that there was some element of pressure.
Sure.
That there was some nerves there. She wasn't quite as composed. Like, experience is one thing, but I think like composure is a weapon. You know what I mean? Like for me, it's always been a weapon for me. And I thought, like, I don't care if this girl comes like a bat out of hell. I'm gonna do what I have to do. There's a feeling out process, and I wasn't sure how aggressive she was gonna be, but something told me that she wasn't gonna come out flying out the gate. That she was gonna try to be a little more technical. Now, her coach is knowing that a path to victory against me is to make it as ugly as possible. That I'm technical. That I want to be moving my head. I want to be using my footwork and things like that. What do? You got to make it ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me knowing that going in, like, I feel like I already had her game plan figured out. And I was like, if she comes forward, then I'm going to take her down. Like, if you get too aggressive, then that's what's going to happen. You know what I mean? So
that was one of the things that I was really curious about going into the fight. And I never asked you because I wanted to just see it unfold. But you're talking about going from a 9-minute fight to a 15-minute fight. And I know that I had no question that you were going to be in shape for it and you'll be ready to go. But I was curious to see, heading into it, like managing output. And I saw, maybe it didn't feel like it for you, but I saw no difference whatsoever. Like, as far as like your output from a 9-minute fight to a 15-minute fight. In fact, I would say I was kind of surprised that you were as aggressive and active as you were right out of the gate. I felt like you went out there and you start throwing the jab. Like I'm so used to seeing, like, you weren't going to idle and you looked intent about like making like a good solid start. Like you weren't going to let her dictate the terms of the fight right away. And I felt like particularly in the first two rounds as I watched it progress, and I'm not even talking about the clinch work, I'm not talking about the ground game, like that's a separate conversation. Just in terms of the striking, your footwork, managing distance, I thought she started to get frustrated as the went on, and I think it maybe led her down a certain path that she may not have necessarily taken. But I sense that level of frustration for Mateo as like in the first two rounds in particular. Did you sense that as well? Like when you were having striking exchanges with her, because you're really really hard to hit. But I'm used to seeing that because I've seen all your fights. I think for other people who are seeing you fight for the very first time, they don't necessarily know about like your footwork. They don't know about how elusive you are and how hard you are to hit clean. I felt like a lot of the times that she was able to hit you, those shots were blocked. Like she didn't really hit you clean until like the third. And we'll talk about that in a second. But for the first two rounds, I just sensed frustration on her end.
So like going in, I knew, and I was saying it in the back room. I was like, she's gonna get frustrated.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get frustrated. And that was I already knew that based on watching her fights and her fighting style. And even in training, like I had prepared for more pressure in training and people walking me down than I actually got in the fight. So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So I was like, dude, like I already had like 4 girls walking me down crazy. Like, so I was like, I'm going to make her frustrated. I'm going to be elusive. Like my coach's whole thing was just don't get sucked into a brawl. Just don't you know what I mean? Don't let that ego take over and start, getting sucked into a brawl. And of course, at times you will get sucked into these exchanges, but you have to quickly remind yourself, like, okay, back on my stick, back on, back on my bike, whatever it is. So I knew that she was going to get frustrated, and I did sense the frustration. Obviously it's on the girl's face, but also when the volume decreases.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because now you're missing more. So now you're less willing to throw. And now you have like the element of the takedown in. So, it becomes like a little bit overwhelming. By the third round, she just had to go balls to the wall because she was down 2 rounds. You know what I mean? So that's what made her get desperate. And she did her best work in the fight by getting desperate and trying to make it ugly. So yeah, there was definitely an element of frustration.
This was my most favorite fight of yours. By a lot. And the reason why I say that is because I've always known you're a really good striker. Like I've seen it. Like it's just what I'm used to seeing time and time again. It's like Mariah's gonna be out with that jab, and she's gonna throw that in your face a whole bunch. But there are other subtle things that I saw, like your clinch work was freaking fantastic. Anytime you got up against the cage, I felt that you were able to like dig for hooks if you were in a defensive position. If you were preventing a takedown, you were able to do that against the cage. You were able to reposition, dig for hooks, flip her around, and now all of a sudden you're throwing knees at her, at her body. And then they got to a point there got to a point. I want to say it was in the second. I could be wrong, but you got a takedown right off of a clinch, got her down on the ground. You're able to work some ground and pound and just show things about your game that make you so well-rounded. Like you're not just a striker, like you're a complete mixed martial artist. And that's what made you win this fight. Like you won the fight not only because of getting the better of the striking exchanges, but through the entire body of work. And I had to ask going into this one, I didn't know this, but they were like telling us the scores at home. So I'm still not sure how I feel about that because it seemed like so anticlimactic in a way for me. But I wanted to get your opinion, like as this fight is unfolding, did you know, even without the scores being read to you, like knowing that you were able to kind of get those takedowns when you wanted, knowing that you were basically dictating the terms of this fight, like did you know that, like in your mind, like were you reasonably sure, like okay, like round 1 for sure, round 2 I definitely got, or is there kind of like a level of unknown? Because I know you've been in some weird situations in the past where it doesn't always like work like as common sense would normally dictate.
So, yeah, I've been, like you said, I've been in some weird situations where I thought I won the round and like I was confident that I did, and it comes back that they didn't score it for me. So my opinion now is like, I just, I asked my coach, like, you think I won that round? He's like, are you, and I asked him after the first
Yeah.
round, are you crazy? Of course you won that. He like asked me, like, because I'm so unsure now because I've
Yeah.
these situations, and I'm so it's, you never know what, if there's a bias. I came in, like I said, thinking that there might be one.
Yeah.
And just don't, and especially for somebody that wants to strike, like now I'm nervous that, oh, they're not going to like my game plan. You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, they want to see me strike. They want this to be a barn burner striking fight. That's why they booked this.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm like, I gotta win this fight. Whatever
Right.
I gotta do, I'm gonna win this fight. So
Right.
despite not being the way they wanted it to be, which is, an all out brawl, that's what I was thinking. And I didn't think, I had to wait for him to tell me that I won these rounds, because I was like, I can never be too sure. Like,
Yeah.
even with the 2 takedowns in the first round and the takedown in the second, I mean, I got the takedowns in all the rounds, but you never, and I was throwing ground and pound. I wasn't just laying there. So
You
I
were
made,
active. Yeah.
you know what I mean? I made that a point not to lay on, because they said backstage too, they're like, we stand you up quick. Like, if you are not active in what you're doing, you're just holding someone down, like, we stand you up. We'll warn you, and the second time around, we're standing you up.
You better
So
work. Yeah.
exactly. So that's what I was like, all right, right to the elbows, right to the ground and pound, like wherever, whenever I could. That's what the shoulder shots were about. It was like, all right, my arms are tied up, I can't punch her, start nailing her with my shoulders. Like, so I just wanted to stay busy, and I thought, like, all right, if they don't like the takedowns, at least maybe they'll like the ground and pound.
The elbows, the knees, the extended amount of time that you have to work with. Did it feel like an unchaining a moment of sorts? Because when you're fighting on the AMI scene, you have so many rules, so many restrictions. They don't want you doing certain things. Now everything's on the table. Leg locks, doesn't matter. Elbows, knees, whatever the case may be. Is it kind of like weird, or maybe weird's not the right word, but like reaching into the tool bag and like grabbing out one of those tools that you're like, don't touch that. That's dad's tools. You're not allowed to fucking do that. Like none of that shit matters now. Like you can reach for that. Do you have to like think about when you can throw knees and elbows? Like, is it kind of weird, like getting used to being able to like use those tools now? I was just curious. I know like you drill this stuff like, to death in the training room, but for a fight, it's like, you're not like you have to kind of like almost like reset yourself. And that's kind of got to be kind of a weird experience of sorts.
Definitely, unchaining is the right term to use. I was like, so I lusted over this freedom, Tyler, for so long, where I could throw elbows and knees to the face, and not worry about stuff like, and even on the ground, like throw elbows on the ground. Like, I definitely lusted over that. And obviously you do those things in training. Not knees to the face per se. I have landed plenty accidental knees to the face in the tie clinch. So I was like, ooh, I get to do it on purpose now, and it's gonna be so much better. Like, you do have that in your mind. I would say the scariest part about it is like, you want to throw the kicks and the knees as a person's on their way up, but you don't want it to be illegal. So you're like super hesitant about actually doing it. That's one thing that, like, because I had a couple of moments where she was standing up, and I like peeked to see, like, all right, is she all the way up? Is she all the way up? And then I threw the knee to the face on the way up, or when she was getting up. And I thought about throwing a head kick, but I was like, but what if she's not all the way up? And, you do have that go on in your head. And it's like, it's too much to be like, you have a matter of seconds, and you're sitting there having a whole debate in your head in this matter.
Well, we just saw that last week with Robert Whitaker and Marvin Vettori. Jason Herzog's like yelling at Robert Whitaker. Like Robert Whitaker didn't even do anything. He's like, don't freaking knee him on the ground. Like, and then he's like pauses, and it just seemed like an absolute eternity, but he's like processing everything, right? And then he just like uppercuts him in the face, like, which that's totally cool. But like, to see a guy at that level, excuse me, to see a guy at that level, Robert Whitaker, one of the best fighters pound for pound in the entire world, he still hesitates, and it should be like second nature at this point. But like you saw that moment of hesitation, and Herzog's warning him, and I appreciate what Herzog's saying, but there's also that point where it's like, hey, listen, I don't know. I'm a hard ass, and I'm pretty unreasonable. If I were a ref, it's like I'm not telling you shit. I'm not saying anything. It's like, hey, I told you what the rules are. Like we had a chance to like talk about what the rules were, and so if you had a question, like we should have done that shit already. It's too late now. We're in the fight, and I'm not saying shit to anybody, and I'm not gonna preempt anything. It's like I'm gonna react to what I see, but I'm not gonna like preempt anything. Like that's your job as the fighter to dictate the action, not me. I'm the ref. I don't know. It's just how I see it.
I mean, I get that from your standpoint. It is though, it's nice to have that guidance. Most of the time you don't really need it. Like
Yeah.
you know when a person is down and when they're not for the for the most part. They only said they didn't do that for my fight. She threw an illegal up kick at one point. It didn't land, but because she threw it, the ref did say, "Oh, she's down right now. She's down." Like he told her, like, "Don't throw that," because I was on in guard. I
Yeah.
was on east, so I was technically down. I'm like not thinking of it because I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like whatever, let's keep fighting. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I'm used to not having those warnings though as well.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? I've never, and so I'm like, what's it matter to me? I in early amateur before when you're not allowed to do ground and pound to the face, and I'm like hitting people in the collarbone, in the chest, wherever I can, like
Right.
they'll warn you and say like, all right, like, be careful with it because I'm cutting it close. I'm like, I'll punch you in the neck. Does it count? Like I don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that's legal. I don't, but I'm like, you know, so those kind of warnings you get. They'll tell you, preemptively watch the back of the head if a person turns. They did tell me, like, I didn't throw anything to the back of the head. I was throwing elbows and she went to kind of like get her base, like, all fours. So I stopped throwing the elbows, obviously, because she turned. Now it's the back of her head, and
Right.
he had said it as well. He's like, preemptively,
Yeah.
they're not gonna, they're not gonna stop anything, even if I did hit her in the back of the head. So they don't take. They're like, we're not gonna take the position. We're not gonna do this. We're not gonna do that. Just keep fighting. I'm like, all right, sounds cool to me, dude.
Hey, well, there are definitely cool fights to watch. There's like one I I feel like having watched that fight, and I know that you've watched it probably, a few times yourself. I think the true moment of adversity was in the third round. She came out on fire, and she was able to get some good strikes in on you. I don't. It. I wasn't surprised because she went into that third round knowing that she was two in the hole and knowing that she needed to get a finish. When you look back at that fight now, and you look at that third round in particular, what were some things that kind of stand out at you when you're having to like reflect back on that today? Because that's like the growth moment for you. Like things are going good, you're kicking ass for the first 10 minutes, but like what are you really learning when you're crushing it for 10 minutes? Probably not a lot. The learning moment I think happened for you in the third round. What was that for you?
It was, now she's coming as aggressive as we thought she might be. And now it's like, all right, we have to use that forward momentum against her. And it was just, as a fighter, as a person, you're like in the third round and you're like, I'm not cruising. You don't want to let this person or these judges or anybody think that you're cruising. So
Yeah,
you want to dig deep. Like obviously, you get like a little tired. Like the
sure.
way I am, I get my second win a lot later than people because my cardio lasts like those two full rounds. I was good to go.
Yeah.
I started feeling a little bit tired, and then I got my second win toward the end of the third round.
Yes.
So my second win was like at a weird time.
Yeah.
So if I had to say, like, it was basically my coach screaming at the top of his lungs that made me go for that takedown. I just
Yes.
I couldn't listen to
I knew
him.
as soon as you got it, I was like, okay, we're
He was right. Listen, he was right. He was screaming for it, screaming for it. And obviously you have like a lot of things going on in your mind where you're like, this girl's coming forward on you. You want to land your shots. You don't want to just get hit. You want to get it back. Like obviously
right.
any fighter probably feels that way. So it was just you. you know, getting back to being on my jab, using my footwork, not getting, you know, sucked into these exchanges that, you know, in the end of the, you know, in the end of the fight, you're like, you want to bite down, you know, a
Right.
part of you is like, I don't want you to think I'm backing down. So I want to, like, despite me being a little bit tired, like, I'm not, you know, I'm not a bitch, basically.
Right.
It's like,
I got you.
you know, I may be a little tired. So you want to get your licks back. But then I broke away from that because my coach was like literally having a fit. So I went for the takedown. And that was like, all right, I did the right thing. Now I get to, you know, ride out this round, get my ground and pound in, and maybe I might steal the round back, maybe I won't, but I know I'm up 2. So it was like kind of that situation.
Yeah, and you didn't get dominated or anything like that. It wasn't a 10-8 or anything. So it was one of those things where I was yelling for the takedown too. I'm like, right, go for the fucking takedown. I'm like, so for
The
Paul to say it,
commentators were too. Everybody
I
was.
was like, oh my god, what? Like, I was like, let's go for this freaking takedown. What are we doing? But of course, you know, everyone's an asshole. Everyone's got their own opinions. We're not in the cage, but you did what you needed to do to get the win, and that had to have been an amazing like feeling of accomplishment. All the adversity, completely out of your comfort zone, really. Like this is an entirely new experience, and that's got to like give you a lot of confidence going into your second fight, wherever that happens to be, and whenever that happens to be. That has got to that's going to be something to fall back on because you can say to yourself like, hey, listen, I had that fish out of water experience. I went down to Florida. I went down with no fans, with no real teammates, just my coach, and I was thrown in a completely different environment, and I thrived in it. And that's got to like make you feel really good in terms of like what's around the curve for you.
Can I just say though, I feel like I do well in discomfort. I think that I do. You know, you say fish out of water in terms of like, I guess, location, and like you said, not having my not
Yeah,
usual base, the people that I know, all that stuff. But I was like, I felt like I belonged there, man. Like it was like, you know what I mean? Like I was
yeah,
there and I was like, I fucking belong here. Like
yeah,
I fit right in. Like despite not you know, not having home turf and my teammates there, the amount of support was like crazy. It felt like everybody was there with me because everybody was watching.
yeah.
People watching, you know what I mean? My sister was literally like out at the bar watching on her phone, like she was like completely ignoring her friends just to see this. She's like, no matter what, like all my people were finding a way to watch. And I really I felt the energy there from them with all the messages that I got and all, you know. So it's like I felt like, yeah, I was on a mission, but I didn't feel out of my element. I was like, man, like I fit right in here. Like, you know, it felt comfortable, like comfort in the discomfort in a way.
Yeah, I guess like I phrased it that way because it's like you know you make the pro debut and thinking to myself like if I were you, it's like yeah, I want my crew to be there. I want my people to. I've worked so hard for this moment. Like I want like you know 100 people from the gym to show up and pack the stands and like we're here for a good time and like let's enjoy it because it wasn't just me who got it who like arrived here like yes you're a fighter, yes this is a solo sport, but like there are people that are grinding with you, there are people that are like making you better every single day, and even if they are amis or whatever the case may be, it's like I don't know, it becomes a team sport in a sense at that point because it's like no, that's my girl up there, like we've been like working our ass off to like get her ready for this moment. And that's kind of I don't know if it's a killjoy, but it's one of those things where it's like you're making your pro debut and you would want other people to like be there in person to experience that. But just you know, this is just the way that things are. It ended up working out this way, but to be able to like still feel that connection despite the distance, despite there maybe being 20 or 30 people in the room, I think that's a testament to the people that do support you and the people that do have your back. That's really special because not everybody has that.
Yeah, it was honestly like this fight, I got more support than any other fight. And I was like, like I told you, like people that I went to high school with that I haven't spoken to in 10 years, that I
Yeah.
don't even coming out the woodwork, like, oh, I'm watching your fight, or I watched your fight, or sending me like these messages of encouragement. I'm like, holy shit, like you're almost like, damn, you remember me? Like,
Right.
it's just like, and a lot of strangers and stuff like that. Like it's funny, the support is still overwhelming. I went to this restaurant in town the other day, and one of the guys that works there comes up to me and he's like, I have a question. I'm like,
Oh
okay.
God. Yeah.
And he's like, is your name Mariah? And I'm like, yeah, why? And he goes, are you a fighter? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, wow, like, I saw your stuff on Instagram. I thought I recognized you. Like, and I was like, holy shit, like things get around. Like,
Yeah,
you know
I
what I mean?
guess so.
I don't know the guy, but it was like a lot of the support is just exemplary. Like that, a lot of the support that I've gotten has been from people like I don't even know. And like that's been, over the course of even my amateur career, but like for people to actually go out and watch it, you know what I mean? Like you might comment on somebody's like, oh, good luck or whatever. But for people to actually like take the time to watch it, I'm like, wow. Like I felt so like, I don't know, it's like it's blessing, like a
Yeah.
blessing that
Yeah.
people are, and you don't realize like they're letting you know, like, oh, I'm inspired by you and this, that, and the third. And, I'm just trying to, make it my own way, like do my own thing, be my genuine self, be my best self, whatever you want to call it. And the way people are receiving it in such a positive way, like that, that was amazing to me. And, especially now I have a lot of amateurs on the team.
Mhm.
So I want them to see like my experiences and be like, you know what? Yeah, like we're gonna have to go and fight at other people's, turfs, and we're gonna have to travel, and we're gonna be out of our element, and curveballs are gonna be thrown, but you have to kind of keep to it. Like, trust in the training, trust in the family that this team is, everything.
Hey, props to the guy for approaching you, because I'm the type of person where I'd be like, I'm pretty sure that's her, but I'm not going to say anything because I'm, that I'll just be a weirdo, right? Like, and then he'd like eat at me the rest of the day. And it's like I'd see you and for the next fight, whenever that is, and be like, I'm pretty sure that was her. But, it's like it's so weird. I'm weird like that. But I was at the CFFC fight, and my wife is sitting right next to me, and we're like cage side. And my wife's like, is that Aljamain Sterling? And I felt like it was a proud moment for me, because this girl, like, she teaches fourth grade. Like, my wife did not give two shits about MMA until I started doing this. And now she like watches it with me. And yeah, so it was my wife who recognized him. She's like, that's Aljamain Sterling. You should go get a picture with him. And I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna be like that fucking weird guy. But I'm like, yeah, you're right. Let me go talk to this guy. Hopefully he's not an asshole. And he was like the sweetest guy ever. He really
Yes.
was. I was
That,
more I was actually more excited to talk to Keith Peterson though. Like
oh man.
Keith Peterson actually sat next to me for that fight for a little bit. Really nice guy. He did not smell like alcohol and cigarettes. I'm just
I
saying
was
he
gonna
didn't.
ask.
He did not. So he does like chew, and he's got like a spit bottle that he carries with him. So maybe Dom got a little confused. I did not smell any alcohol. I didn't smell any cigarettes. I think Dom is just being a little bit of a hater. And I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to edit out most of these coughs, but there might be a couple in there, and you guys are just going to have to deal with it. Before I let you go, let's go into the mailbox. I want to give you the opportunity to respond to a couple of questions. One of the questions, I think this is a good one. What was your favorite fight of your amateur career?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, Nart asking all these tough ass questions.
Yeah, leave it to Nart, I gotta say, I mean, it's tough, but honestly, I think if I had to say, like, probably my first one, and that's only because I had an injury, a really, really bad injury on my knee two or so weeks before that fight. And, you know, it was I could only box for that camp. I couldn't
Mhm.
do anything. When I tell you, like, my knee was obliterated at that time. So for me coming in, and this is my first fight, to face adversity like immediately and still be able to work around it. And I was like, I can only box, but tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna box my ass off. Like that was the mentality. And I think that was why it was my, like, going in first fight, you have all these expectations, and me off the bat, I have this handicap, but I'm like, my coach was like, oh, like, should we pull out of the fight? Should we back out of the fight? And I was like, fuck no. Like, I waited so long for this. There's no way. Like, I'm not pulling out. I was like, we're going to work around it. And we did. I was in a knee brace, hitting pads, doing everything that I had to do, keeping it upper body stuff. So just purely for that. And it was fun to have those exchanges too, where it was like the other girl really didn't have, she wasn't kicking or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't worry about that. We just got to straight box. And that was a really fun experience because that was the fight I used the most, like head movement, the most like slipping, countering, pulling, things like that. So that was the most fun.
Would you rather knock somebody out or submit them? I think I know the answer.
I would rather knock somebody out.
Okay.
If I'm honest, I would. I mean, like, people ask me all the time, like, oh, like, what's your favorite part of the fight? And I'm like, the part where I'm winning. Like, I don't care if it's on the ground or if it's on the feet. People ask you all the time, and I'm like, bro, I'm just out there to win. However I'm gonna beat your ass is however I'm gonna beat your ass. Like, I'm not picky. Like, I'm gonna take whatever you give me. But obviously the more satisfying thing would be just knocking someone out.
Ooh, this is a good one. Weili Zhang versus Carla Esparza, that happens here in November. Does Carla Esparza have a chance to beat Weili?
I mean, I never like saying someone doesn't have a chance because it's a fight and anything
Yeah,
can happen in
true.
a fight. But I really think that Weili's she's really gonna take it to her. I don't know. Like, of course, Carla has, great wrestling.
Yeah.
I just don't know if she's strong enough to kind of like keep Weili down if she, gets her down. And Weili has great takedown defense. She also has good takedowns of her own. So I see her being more well-rounded. In the stand-up, she's phenomenal in the stand-up. Great hips. She goes, has a lot of trips and throws of her own. And the strength advantage is probably going to be insane, honestly. And she's got cardio for days, so nobody can sit there and say, well, Carla has the better cardio. And
yeah, does she? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I'm going with Weili for sure.
I am too, and of course we know what that means. That means we got a trilogy fight that'd be coming up, and I have to imagine Rose is going to want to get in there. And I know Rose wants that last fight back. I know she wants that back. I was so disappointed. Like, that was such a stinker of a fight. It was probably it's a shitty thing to say because I really do like Rose. I do. Like, who doesn't like Rose Namajunas? She's like one of the most exciting fighters in the entire UFC. But that was probably the worst, I think, title fight I've ever seen in my entire life. It was god awful. Esparza, I felt like nobody won. Like, I don't know. Like, to me, if I'm Dana, it's just kind of like, you know what? Nobody won, but nobody's going home with the belt either. Like, we're vacating this title, and like, you guys are just gonna have to fight for it again. Like, we'll call it a no contest. The belt goes home with me. You guys are gonna have to re-roll because this was shit. I know that would never happen, but that fight was so goddamn awful. I have to imagine, like, Weili versus Rose just seems like those are the two best strawweights in the entire world right there. I want to see that one again. Like, their last fight, I did have Rose. Like, I mean, it was a split, but Rose did enough to win the fight. I didn't have a problem with that. And then, of course, we saw what the first one looked like with a knockout. So it is one of those things where Rose is up by 2, but that's nonetheless, I think that's going to be a trilogy fight that is inevitable if Weili gets the strap. Do you agree?
Yeah, Weili's a real problem. Even though Rose has fought her twice before, and she knows kind of what to expect. How like what adjustments is she gonna make is my question. Because she pretty much fought that fight as she always does. Like her strategy is usually pretty consistent because she's had the best like boxing and footwork in the division for a while now, to be honest. You know,
right.
everybody knows her about her boxing and her footwork, and she's always made that work. Of course, she does have good jiu-jitsu. She didn't resort to it that much, and her takedowns, she does have good takedowns. She didn't resort to it as much, you know, in like recently. But yeah, my question is, you know, and I love Rose. You know, I do. You know, like, please,
Of
I can't
course.
get
How
started.
can you not?
Yeah, like how could I not?
Yeah.
Definitely one of my idols, but I feel like Wei Li comes in with more threats.
It'd be
You know,
interesting to see because Wei Li, I mean, her fight against Joanna, she like, holy shit.
yes. And after
Where,
watching that, yes, is
like,
another concern for me.
like, geez, it didn't surprise me that she won. It just surprised me that she made Joanna like look neutered, basically, out there. Wait, yeah, that was one-way traffic. Like I expected it to be a close fight. And then, you know, one of those 50-50 toss-ups. I was not expecting Wei Li to just like unleash an ass beating, and that's exactly what that was. That was an ass beating. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I want to see it. I want to see the trilogy. I, today, if you asked me who I had to put my bet on, I think I would bet on Wei Li to win that fight. I know that sounds kind of like that's not a popular thing to say, but hey, we bet with our wallets, not with our hearts.
Oh yeah, and you know what else too? I think mentally,
Yes, yes,
question. I
yes.
have some questions about, you know, where Rose is mentally. And I think like Wei Li's on, like, you know what I mean? Like she's locked in. She wants to work her way back.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I just feel like the determination for her is different. I don't think Rose is as hungry anymore after, you know, she accomplished what everybody sets out to do. You know,
Right, right.
it's hard for you to maintain that hunger. And especially given that she's, you know, not been the most she's always had a lot of mental hiccups,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
like in confidence in things like that, you know. So that mentality sometimes can really get you, and especially like when you're not in that young hungry fighter position anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like she probably, you know, rather go work on her farm or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like her mind is in a different place now, I feel like.
I think this position puts Wei Li in a very unique situation. What I mean by that is you drop 2 fights against Rose. She was not supposed to like the plan was not for her to get a title fight anytime soon. Like she was gonna have to be in gatekeeper mode and hope for a fuck up and hope for the blue corner to steal one. It happened. And now she's like the most logical person to get a shot. I think for her, it's like, okay, I put myself in a position where my back was against the wall. I was supposed to be a gatekeeper. I have to strike while the iron's hot. I'm not losing this fucking fight. And Rose could come back and be like a big badass. That's all fine and well, but she's not beating me a third time. It ain't fucking happening. Like I think she's gonna like tap into something that Rose just can't tap into. I think there's like a superpower. Like that is her thing. That's what she needs to get over. Like Rose loses the fight, it's a bummer, I'm sure. But like she's gonna go down as like one of the best strawweights of all time. Like Wei Li has something to prove. Like she has to prove she can beat Rose. Rose doesn't have to prove shit against Wei Li. She's already beat her twice. She's beat everybody. So like, you know, at this point, it's just lapping everybody now. And is that hunger? Is that enough for her? I don't know. I think for Wei Li, knowing in her mind like this is the person I have to beat to be the best. I think we're striking something here, and I think that gives her a different like layer of superpowers that Rose just can't tap into.
Yeah, you know what? I love the way you put that too. Like just another realm that she's gonna tap into. And the way you're saying, you know, she just lapped everybody. At some point, it gets old, I guess, right? Or
Yeah,
it gets, you know, it just your hunger is not there because you've been training since you were.
It's beating up your little brother. It's like, I beat this guy's ass every
exactly.
day. Like, that doesn't like get me
Up in the
motivated.
morning. Yeah, that doesn't get you up in the morning. And then you have the fact that you've been training since you were what, 16 years old, like doing MMA very, very young. And you know, I always said, man, I wish I got into this sooner. But then I'm like, well, I probably would have been burnt out at this point. Think about it like that, right?
Yeah.
So you do, like, she's still young. She's just, you know, she might be a little burnt out, if I'm honest. And I think that's what it is.
Which is kind of sad though, because like this is supposed to be like peak time for her. Like she's 30, 31. It's like, dude, you should be like peak for like 3 more years at least. But to your point, you've been doing it for half your life now. It's like, is that hunger still there? Like, and you know, everything that you've accomplished in the sport, knowing that for as far as women's MMA is concerned, you're on the Mount Rushmore of women's MMA. Like, I don't know. Is that enough? We'll see. But I don't know. I just think that it's Whaley's time now. I just it feels inevitable to me. Then it'll just be a matter of like maybe early 23, we'll see Rose get another crack at it. And then we'll see if I'm, you know, full of hot air, if I'm onto something. But we have one final question. I like this question. Who's your favorite male UFC fighter?
Dustin the Diamond Poirier.
Hey, exciting guy to watch, and I'm sure he's like he comes across as being like a very down to earth, cool guy.
I did meet him once before. He's so fucking nice. Like, he's a real, like, he talks to you and sits with you like he's just a regular person. Like, and I think that that's that appealing quality where we watched fights with him, you know. I believe it was the Adesanya versus Blachowicz fight, if I'm not mistaken. But you know, he did a meet and greet, and then after the meet and greet, you know, we shut the place down, and a few of us, I actually had a mutual friend or whatever, so a few of us kicked in and watched it at that bar. And he was just like really cool. He was like, oh guys, you know, like we were just asking him little fangirly questions. We're like, all right, who kicks harder, Connor or Justin? And he said Connor kicks harder, actually. He said by far Connor kicks harder. But he goes, I do have a dent on my quad from Justin Gaethje. And he was like, yeah, come feel it. So there's a dip in his quad.
Oh shit.
Dip in his muscle where he was just getting slammed with these leg kicks over and over again in the same spot. So like he was just like super cool, like a bro, you know, like but he's also pretty reserved. He doesn't make himself, you know, known in the room. So and I identify with stuff like that where I'm like a low-key person. So another low-key person is just that's my kind of vibe. Also, like he's just a dog, like, you know, as a fighter.
Absolutely.
Like that, you know, I love that, you know, the boxing and that he has, the combinations that he has, and then just the heart, like that sheer will, even when he's exhausted, that sheer will to keep going. Like, I love that about him.
For me, like if I had to answer the question, obviously for me it's Anthony Smith, but another guy that I'm a really big fan of, actually, he's not the most active guy, but I love watching him fight. It's Gregor Gillespie. I fucking love watching that guy fight. He only wants to fight Tony Ferguson. He only wants to fight people ahead of him, and that's not the way to play this game. Sometimes you have to punch down for a little bit for the right fight opportunity to open up. After the Diego Ferreira fight, he wanted to fight Tony Ferguson, and you know, who wants to fight a freaking like heavy grappler guy like that? Like that's a tough fight. Like I can't imagine a whole lot of people want to fight like Gregor Gillespie because number one, he doesn't have that like huge name recognition, and that's a really fucking hard fight. So if I'm Tony Ferguson, it's like, I could probably fight somebody that's a little bit easier that isn't going to be as like grueling to fight against. Why do I fucking want that fight? I don't blame Tony. That makes sense. I think for Gregor, it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, dude, like you're not always going to be able to punch up. Sometimes you got to punch down for a little bit, and you have to be able to work with the promotion.
Yeah.
And I think he's probably a little difficult to work with. That's probably why we don't see him all that much. But I fucking love watching that guy fight. He's so entertaining. You know, I thought he was dead for a while after what Kevin Lee did to him, but then he respawned and then he fought Fajeda, and that fight was amazing to watch. It was like one of my favorite fights from last year because that was a very, very that pace was insane. I got tired watching that fight.
Yeah. My only thing is like he's not in a position to be picky and choosy.
Exactly. You're
That's
right.
that kind of turns you off because you're like, you really haven't done enough to be in that position,
Yeah.
so kind of like you're still in a position where you have to prove something. Like you said about Whaley, like she still has something to prove. But even then, I feel like she's in a better position to be choosy. Like, you know what I mean? Because of the caliber of fighters she's faced and what she's done, with the title and everything. But
Yeah.
for him, like, we haven't seen enough of you for you to be picky like this.
The other thing to think about is, he's 34,
Yes,
35.
exactly.
So, the clock's ticking, buddy. Like, you gotta like get active. Like, he's in amazing shape. I mean, the guy looks freaking jacked beyond belief. But at the same time, it's like your body can only be at this level for a certain amount of time, and sitting on the sidelines isn't really necessarily the way to go to get the fight that you want. And at 35, 34, 35 years old, how many years does he have left where he can fight at this level? 2, 3? I don't know.
Fighting once a year at that, like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah, and looking at it, it's like those weight cuts. I know he's not the biggest guy, but he's certainly not 155 pounds. The guy's probably 190 pounds. Like he's so freaking jacked beyond belief that he's got to like make that cut, and that cut is more and more difficult to make.
As you
The
get
older you get.
older.
So, Mariah, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I want to give you the opportunity if there's anyone that you'd like to shout out, anything at all before we sign off and before we start watching the fights.
I know. I can't wait to get to it. I want to shout out you first because you're the man, always have been. Always glad when we do these and we link up. I mean, we talk every day, so it's not like none of this gets said, but I always love to come on here and do the show with you. Always shout out my coaches, my training partners, Durante Physical Therapy for keeping me in shape, definitely in fighting shape. And F45 in Pinebrook. My one of my good friends owns that, so really, really nice spot to go get some conditioning in. And I just, I can't wait for us to do this again. Hopefully it doesn't take another 3 months. We'll have things to talk about sooner than that.
we will. we will definitely make it in way less amount of time. But yeah, just really like doing this, and we will have you back soon.